I want to tell you about the routine I've been following for the last 30 days that's almost completely reshaped the way that I think. Read, walk, write. That's it. Let me explain why this routine works, what this has done for me, and the potential pitfalls that you can run into along the way. This routine fixes one thing: brain rot. We all know how it feels. Midnight, you've been watching YouTube shorts for 3 hours and you don't know where the time has gone. Ah, I'm not here to moralize. I've been there. Tech companies have spent billions of dollars building the most engaging apps possible, apps that hijack our curiosity. The same curiosity that took us to the moon or allowed us to develop the scientific method is now being exploited by these same companies. The solution to this is not willpower, it's a replacement, somewhere for that curiosity to go. This is where read, walk, write comes in. The first step is to read, but specifically to read something that you're interested in and that makes you think. Most of what we consume online is information shaped but passive. It flows through without leaving much behind. Reading a book or a long form article is different. It requires active engagement. Your brain has to build the picture rather than receive it. Pick something you're genuinely curious about. It doesn't have to be dense or academic. Fiction counts, long essays count, a well written book on any subject counts. The signal here is friction. When you come up against something that you haven't heard before, a thought you haven't had, or something that contradicts maybe a thought that you already hold, this is a signal that you found something to think about while on your walk. You can read for 5 minutes or 30 minutes. What really matters is this signal. Once you have that, that's when you know it's time to go for a walk. It's not about volume, it's about quality of content. And once you have a quality idea that you want to examine further, you can be done reading and you can get ready to walk. Step 2 is the walk, and more specifically, a thinking walk. Not a podcast walk or a music walk, a thinking walk, and the distinction matters. 2 rules: you're unplugged, and you go in with something on your mind. For the unplugged piece, leave your phone at home or set it to do not disturb if you're tracking steps, and walk for 30 minutes, no earbuds. For the second piece, before you leave, bring to mind something from your reading, a question it raised, an idea you're not sure about, a connection you started to make and didn't finish. Hold that lightly as you start walking and let your mind work on it. I don't know the precise neuroscience of why physical movement unlocks a different kind of thinking, but I can tell you from experience that it does. Something about moving through space seems to get things unstuck. Ideas that felt fixed start to shift, and connections appear between things that didn't seem related. Here's a concrete example of how this has worked for me in my own experience. In my free time, I'm designing a simple CPU, and this involves reading a lot of somewhat dense computer architecture literature and blogs. And each day, I would try to implement a new component within my CPU. And when I would get to a point where I felt like it wasn't clicking, that's when I would take off and go on my walk. And day by day, every single time, I would leave on the walk not exactly knowing where to draw the connection from A to B, and I would come back from that walk having figured that out. The third step is the one most people skip, and it's the one that makes the other 2 stick. Writing is where thinking becomes real. Here's why. When you're just thinking about something, your brain is really good at filling in the gaps in your knowledge and smoothing over the stuff that you don't know. When it comes time to write, that becomes apparent. And this is what's so cool about this whole process, is all 3 are dependent on each other. As you write, you learn what gaps you have. As you learn what gaps you have, you then know what to read the next day. And then, as you read the next day, you then know what to think on, and the process repeats. It's a flywheel that once you get up to speed can help you generate some really good ideas, much more well thought out ideas in a much shorter period of time. So to continue with my example, one day specifically I was writing about how NAND gates, a form of logic gate, are technically universal. And one of these components was the study of something called De Morgan's laws. It's a simple law in set theory, but I didn't actually understand it as well as I thought. And I thought I had it in my head on my walk on how I was going to explain it. And then when I sat down to write, I realized that my explanation was not good enough to actually convey the message that I wanted. So that then revealed what I needed to research the next day. The next day, I read several more blogs and looked at some other examples online, and then I went for my walk. And that following day, when I wrote my explanation of De Morgan's laws, the explanation I wrote was far more intuitive and much better written than what I had tried to write the day prior. In 30 days of following this routine, I've written over 30 pages and 5 different essays on topics that I am deeply interested in. This is far more writing than I have done, certainly since college. And I'm not saying that to brag. It's more that I was very surprised by the output. And I have to point directly to this process as the driving force for that output. Okay, it's a new day, new outfit. I just got back from my walk, and I wanted to add a few more finishing thoughts on why this routine addresses brain rot, and also some practical steps that you can follow if you want to try this for yourself. So if we think back to our original definition of brain rot, it's kind of mindless consumption without any sort of output, right? The consuming of videos, reels, whatever. I think what this routine does is it does 3 things, right? It doesn't completely negate any sort of input. It's important for us to continue to bring in input and information to continue to learn and develop. And that's what the reading step is. And I would add a slight modifier. Reading can come in all sorts of forms. It can be blogs, books, even trying to find a YouTube video that specifically explains something that you're interested in. That can also be a valuable input. But you want to have quality inputs, not just mindless inputs. The walk, this is the point where you give your mind space, right, to have the thoughts that it needs to have. Another characteristic of brain rot is that continual consumption does not give you that space for your mind to think. And so it's all input, no digestion or output. And the output, is your writing. The writing is really cool because it forces you to actually structure the thoughts that you've just digested during your walk. And it helps you really refine ideas far better than just thinking about things. When you write about something, if you then go on to speak about that with someone else, you're going to be in a far better place because you've already structured your thinking about that topic. And so when you then go to talk about it, you're better equipped to have an educated conversation about it. So how can you apply this in your own life? The first thing you need to do is find something valuable to consume. Consume that until you get to a point where you think you have enough to think about. I know that's kind of vague, but usually you can take in quite a bit of information within 15, 20 minutes of dedicated reading. Once you're there, then go for the walk and just try to keep your mind somewhat focused on that topic and think about it. And one thing that helps me is I actually think about, some of the sentences that I would actually like to write, how I would convey that information. And then when you come home, actually take some time to write about what you thought about and what you've read. When you're writing, look for those gaps in your knowledge and then use that to motivate the next day. So, your walk only has to be maybe 15, 20 minutes. I find that if you go for a little bit longer, sometimes you can have some deeper, more well-rounded thoughts. And then as far as writing goes, write for as long as it takes to find a gap in your knowledge. And if you don't, the next day, try to take on a little bit more in your input. And, just like the gym, you can kind of try to progressively overload this by taking on more information, trying to take on more challenging subjects, and then trying to write about those more challenging subjects. That's what I would recommend. I'd say try this for a week. I think if you want to see true benefits from any habit, you got to stick with it for a month probably before you start to see real tangible benefits. But for me, I followed this practice for a couple of weeks and saw huge benefits from it. So I would say give that a try. And if you got value from this video, I'm kind of new to this whole YouTube thing, but it's something that I'm passionate about, and I really want to share valuable information that's helped me improve my life so that it can help you improve your life. I appreciate you watching till the end. Please consider subscribing. Share this with someone if you think it was valuable or if you think it could help them. And let me know how this routine treats you and if you learn anything from it. I think that's about all. Do hard things because they're not actually that hard. And you'll be amazed where you can go. So have a good one.